Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're about ready, Mr. Weber. Welcome to our board meeting, and if we could have a roll call, please.
The board meeting of Monday, April 18th, 2016. Mr. Ballard.
Here.
Mr. Demakia.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Sturgill.
Here.
And Mr. Williams.
Here. This time we would have Pledge of Allegiance, introduction. Yes, sir.
Mind if you could hobble up?
Leading the Pledge of Allegiance tonight is Lorain High Senior Heaven Steplight. Heaven is accompanied tonight with her mother, Ann Austin, and her sister, Ambrielle. Welcome. During her time as a student at LHS, Heaven has been involved in Upward Bound, has participated in track and field for the Titans. Her leadership both in and out of the classroom has also earned her national recognition as a recent inductee into the National Society of High School Scholars while maintaining a 3.6 grade point average. Please join me in welcoming Heaven to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hi, I'm Heather Steplight, and I was going to talk to you guys about the National Society of High School Scholars. It's a international thing where kids all around the world get to join it, and they're like a mentor for life. They get scholarships and stuff, and they help them with leadership skills and stuff like that. And through Upward Bound, we're doing this project where we're going to help the girls and boys and Boys and Girls Clubs, the little kids, to promote healthy fitness and healthy eating habits. And that's going to be April 28th. And we're going to have them do like little activities outside, like play basketball, kickball and stuff like that, and show them like eating healthy is good. So we're gonna do like little healthy snacks for them and show them like there's fun ways to eat healthy. And I think that's a good idea because kids need to worry about their health, and there's a lot of obesity, and eating healthy and doing physical fitness can help promote that and stop people from being obese and make right healthy eating habits and physical fitness choices.
Hey, Evan, before you sit down, can you introduce your family for us? Can you introduce your family for us? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Come on up the podium. Come all here to cheer for you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Appreciate you coming down. And Evan, what happens? You're a senior this year? So what's going on with you next year?
I'm going to be going to college at Kent State University to major in psychology.
I'm sorry, psychology and
Minor in dancing.
minor in dancing. Good for you. Fantastic. I went to Kent State many moons ago. And by the way, we talked about what I could do to help out. I'm a phenomenal kickball player. Just throwing that out there. So if you need help with kickball, I'm your guy. All right? Thanks, Evan. That was phenomenal 40 years ago. So let me qualify that.
Are we doing the picture?
You gonna do a picture? Yeah, please. Mrs. Brooke, come on. Family shot.
You hop along. You're gonna have to stand back. I will get out of the way.
We have a special guest, longtime friend of the district, Ms. Janine Donaldson, former board member. And there's a student with her, and Ms. Davis, and they're doing some presentation. Oh, he was a student at one time.
It was at one time, but not at Lorain.
Real nice. Real nice.
That's right, we all are.
Good afternoon or good evening. And I want to thank you all for inviting me here. It's been a long time coming. Our project actually was going to come here in February to ask permission to get started. So now we're not asking permission, we're just saying we're here. I just want to say something that Tim did mention that I'm a long time, I think, servant of the district. And as I was walking through the parking lot to come through the doors, the thing that I remembered most was right out of college, I taught music in this very building. And so we came through the doors, and everything else that I've ever done in this school building, whether it was serving on the school board or whatever, it doesn't compare still to that feeling that I get walking down the halls, and I can remember where the different classrooms were. And so that is just a special time, and the folks here that served at that time, I'm very grateful for that. So I guess it's no surprise then that the reason I'm back here today is to work with students. We have a project, and by we, I mean the Elyria and Lorain YWCA, the Lorain County Historical Society, Credit Recovery High School, and the Les Charmettes Club. The Les Charmettes Club is an African American women's group club, and we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. And it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago when Jim Smith approached our club and asked us to do some research on the first African Americans in Lorain. And we were all very excited about that, and to a person we agreed that we wanted to become involved with that. But what happened over time was that the club is all volunteer and there's no staffing involved, and so even though our intentions were good and we wanted to do it, it just never got done. Since that time, Jim and I still talked about that project, and we decided that we were going to do something about it. We being the YWCA of Elyria and Lorain, and the way that we're able to do that is because missions of YWCAs throughout the country is elimination of racism and the empowerment of women. And we have a staff at the Y, whether the staff is myself or some folks that I can enlist from our board or other staff. We have the capacity to get it done, unlike a volunteer organization that really relies solely on volunteers. So Jim and I met. We reached out to Barb Piscopo, the new director of the Historical Society, and we all agreed that this was very important. And it was around Black History Month time that we really were talking about coming and presenting it to you. I'm going to sidetrack just for a moment more. My YWCA is also very much involved in the Confederate flag issue at the Lorain County Fair. And I bring that to your attention not to be controversial or political. I bring that to your attention by example that we can go to our Lorain County Fair and see Confederate flag memorabilia at the fairgrounds. However, we can't go to a Lorain County Historical Society and see where African Americans made a footprint here in Lorain County. Well, that was up until a couple of weeks ago, months ago actually. So we enlisted the aid of Nicole Davis, the principal, and we'll call her up so she can tell you what the end results have been, and also Chris White. Chris is a first-year teacher here at your district. It reminds me about a lot of my passion when I was a first-year teacher. Long story short is that we have gotten the documents that Jim originally brought to our club since the 1905 census for Lorain, and it shows all the African American families that were in Lorain. And you know, ironically, the thing that we would take exception to today is the way that we're able to track the folks that were unlisted. It's because they are marked as colored or black. And so because of that, we can go back and we've got some families that are still in existence. And so we thought it would be a great idea to let these students track these families, and by that, they're also starting to track their own family histories. The unfortunate part, though, is that because of African Americans' legacies in this country, we can't go back very many generations to our family and know who we are. But through experiences of other people's family, we can get a great sense that we contributed a great deal to the city of Lorain and to the city of Elyria. So I'll introduce Nicole Davis at this time, and then she'll introduce Mr. White. Thank you.
Good evening, distinguished board, superintendent, treasurer, and guests. Thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. Unfortunately, we don't have students because we tug of war with them since February, and we didn't want to have to do that again because each time we tell them that they're coming, that means we have to purchase them dinner or something. So we just wanted to make sure that we get this invite out to you all and let you all know what we're doing at Credit Recovery Academy. I am so grateful for Mr. Smith and Ms. Donaldson, especially for Mr. Smith. He's been an avid supporter of the credit recovery program, all of our programs, all of our endeavors, and our students. Whenever we need him, when we tend to give him an invite, he's there, and we totally appreciate that. Ms. Donaldson for enlisting my students who have 504 plans, students who are students with disabilities, students who are English as second language students who are gifted. There's a variety of students in our OGT social studies class, which allows us to do this research. I am very proud to welcome Mr. White, who I hired. I was a part of the hiring committee who selected him. He's a graduate of Ohio State University. This is his first year teaching in Lorain. As a graduate from Ohio State, not only does he have his bachelor's, but he has his master's degree. He is a breath of fresh air for our district. I tried to keep him a secret because usually when I have great things, they are borrowed from me and never returned. So I have succeeded in keeping him until the end of April and hopefully the end of the year. Today I did a formal observation on Mr. White, and I just sent him an email actually that expressed to him my excitement and the energy that I get when I go into his classroom. He has brought history to life for my students. When you walk in that classroom, they are discussing, they are using dialogue, they are using debate. He's had a mock election. He even has students beginning to wear ties to class because they want to represent what he has put into them of being the president and vice president of his classroom. Two students are running, you'll see students running around our building. You may think that they are loosey-goose, but they're actually doing a scavenger hunt because he's working on globalization and the students are looking to find out where things are made so they can do a compare and contrast. He is amazing. I am going to welcome him. I get choked up when I talk about him because that means I made a good selection when I hired him. So again, I appreciate your time tonight and we look forward to seeing you on May 19th.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me. Like everyone said, I'm Chris White, first year teacher, and I'm just from right down the street. I graduated from Midview High School 2010. I went straight to Ohio State where I got my degrees and I came right back. When I heard about a teaching opportunity in Lorain, how can I say no? And again, I'm very young. I know I'm only 24. That's why I blend in with the students. That's why I keep the beard. Try to set myself apart just a little bit. But when I learned that teaching opportunity was in Credit Recovery Academy, I didn't know what to think because I just didn't know what that program was all about. I never experienced one before. I never saw one. Until, so the first thing I wanted to do was to find out who my students were, who the staff was, and kind of what the school climate was in general because I never spent that much time in Lorain. Even though I'm from right down the street, just never made it up here too much. So the first thing I did was kind of just ask them in conversation, getting to know these students, what do you know about your city? What do you know about Lorain? Because their answers can tell you a lot. You know, if you can tell me where you're from and what you know about where you're from, I can kind of tell who you are. And the answers I got from them kind of, stopped me in my tracks. They said, like the buzzwords that kept coming up were hopeless. We're dangerous, we're dead end. And that kind of hit me because this is the future of the city. These kids are at square one of their lives and they're already that jaded. And that's a problem. And so that's when Mrs. Donaldson, Mrs. Davis, of course, and of course, right here, the main man right here, they all came to me with a project. They all came to me with a project that was kind of just depicting what is missing here in Lorain. And that's the culture of the majority population, African American culture. What's the history? And why don't we know it? Why is it hidden? Why do we have to look for it? Why isn't it in your face? Why can't we identify with who we are, who the city is? So I guess what we started with was the list of names, African American family names like the Tastes, the Pooleys, the Walkers, buzzwords that kept on coming up in the 1905 census. And we looked at those families and we needed to build a framework, a structure, a skeleton of what these people were. So in order to do that, we looked at the quantitative data, census data. I wrote a grant for Ancestry.com where we used extensively. We found census data, we found birth certificates, death certificates, we found marriage licenses, everything you need to start building a picture of who these people were. So after we got the kind of framework of the puzzle, we started to fill it in. We're looking at the qualitative data now. So that's going to be like community engagement. We took field trips. We talked to outside organizations around the community. We try to gather as much information as we can to the point where my students were calling up these private organizations on their own time to try and figure out more about who they're studying, who they're looking at. So that didn't really sink into me until a student came to me on a Monday after the weekend and couldn't even wait until third period to tell me about a conversation they had with the health department, of all things, the health department, because they found an obituary, the first recorded African-American settler in Lorain, and they found out what he died from. And that's what blew his mind. That's what he was so excited about, something that small. And again, another example, one of my students found a box in his attic, and the box was from the previous owners of the house. And he saved the box because his mom was going to throw it out because he was so interested in what he could find in there. That means something. That's important. And that means that these kids are finding, these students, these scholars really, are finding out more about their history, they're more about their community, and they're identifying with it. And they're pulling hope from that. So I asked them again just last week, what do you think of the city of Lorain? But I promised Mr. Smith I wouldn't take up a lot of your time. So I can't give you the answer, but I can give you the answer on November 19th. That is going to be our formal presentation of May 19th. My bad, sorry. May 19th. That's the formal presentation at the Carnegie Center, just down the street, at the Lorain Historical Society. So everyone's right. I didn't get to bring any students with me, but they are here in spirit and they are here in paper. I've got the invitations right here. So whenever you guys are ready for them, I'll hand those out. So thanks again for having me, guys. I know you guys are very busy, so thanks for taking some time out and to hear me out.
You mind?
No,
Okay,
no,
so go ahead.
go.
I think it's one thing to come up with an interesting project, but I think it's what makes this project special is the fact that obviously your passion, your enthusiasm, and engaging outsiders to come help out. And Chris, Nicole, Janine, I just want to thank you for your leadership. And on a regular basis, and I think more and more, and I went to the Greater Cleveland School Superintendent Association meetings, a whole lot of people, and everybody's coming up saying, great job, Lorain. I constantly take compliments, quite frankly, on your behalf. And it's the great things that are happening in the classroom. It's the fact that people care enough to ask the right questions, to engage students, and to make sure that they understand that they matter and that we care about them. So again, I want to thank everybody, Jim, for your leadership and putting all this together. These projects do make a difference, and it's whether you're wearing a tie to school because all of a sudden you won an election, or because you know you belong because your family's been here for a long time and you have an understanding, or at least a better understanding of who you are and where you came from. And again, Chris, I just want to say thanks for caring about our kids, and I appreciate what you're doing. So thank you very much.
Dr. Graham, I agree 100%. Janine and I got an opportunity a few weeks ago to watch the kids in action. Didn't call them kids, they're young men, women. And you talk about somebody into something. They were into it. And finding obituaries and finding wedding announcements. And they were just, and if you come on the 19th to the Carnegie, you'll hear these kids. And by the way, it was the 1905 city directory, not a census. And that's all right, about the same thing, except it had addresses. And a very, as Janine pointed out, it was not a nice thing that they did in 1905, because every black family had an asterisk after their name. And then it said black. But let me tell you, from a research point of view, that's what the Chamas or Charmés were able to go to that directory and put together their list. And if you come on the 19th, you're going to find how much African Americans had to do with the city becoming. He mentioned the Tates family, Herndon and Emma Tates. Herndon was brought here by the city to manage a quarry. A lot of people don't know that underneath Central Park is the Oakdale Court. Herndon was, and Emma came here not to work in the court, to run it. And this is in the late 19th century. And a black guy comes to Lorain and then stayed and went into business and helped make Lorain the city it's become. That's what you're going to hear about on the 19th. And I think these students will never forget this experience of learning more. And as I like to remind my friends, there's one name that really, one of the last names back then, she knows what's coming. There was a family in Lorain in 1905 with the last name of Winfrey. And I'd love to see research done to see, gee, could they be really distant relatives of Holcroft?
People blood.
Well, you never know. But Chris and Janine, I have to say, is the one that really got this thing up and running. I don't know. She and I used to have some interesting conversations at former board meetings, did we not? But we always cared about kids, and she's good. Nicole and Chris. Just come and see the students on the 19th. They will amaze you. And I know Carol will be there from the Journal, and it's amazing. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And I'll ask the history teacher a question. Why is tonight significant in the history of the United States?
The Civil War.
Think of Henry Longfellow, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Listen, my children, and you shall hear.
Oh, that fake story that he did?
Well, it was partially
What
true.
happened?
241 years
Fact or
ago
fiction?
tonight, the American Revolution.
We watch the History Channel.
Yeah, it was a lot of fiction. He actually got caught, but
Yeah, he got caught. It's 3 writers.
but, in any case, your passion is spilling over.
He never
on
made it to
those kids.
Lexington or Concord. Never made it. Well, and then you guys can come back again and tune in, and we'll have more history from Jim.
No, you won't.
Yes, we will. But thank you for the presentation. And at this time, we're going to go into an executive session. We have some brief business to conduct. Mr. Weber, it is for items.
Items A1 appointment, A2 employment, A3 dismissal, A7 compensation. Item C, conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. Item D, preparing for, we're not going to do D this evening. Item E, matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or rules or state statutes.
Have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams?
Yes.
See everybody
And we will be
tomorrow.
back to finish the balance of the meeting with decisions. Okay, we are back in session, ladies and gentlemen, and we will entertain our first hearing of the public. Looks like there's no takers. We will accelerate ourselves and move forward. So, I need a motion to approve or amend the signed minutes from whatever meeting that was, April 4th,
Motion.
2016.
Motion to approve.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams?
Are these mics on?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any old business, gentlemen? Moving forward, report and recommendation to the treasurer. Mr. Weber.
Okay, I wrote to you about the financial statements and the purchase orders and donations. Recommend for approval.
Motion to approve. 8.01 to 8.03.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, I have a question regarding the purchase orders in
Yeah.
over $3,000. There is a purchase order for Lustig Evans Lucas in the amount of $10,184.30. Is that the cost for the referee for the Allison Humphreys hearing?
Without saying for certainty, but I think that's what it was, yes.
Well, he
Yeah.
was the
That was it,
referee.
that must have been it then, yes.
And
that
that's
was
the
it.
law firm he belongs to.
Yes.
So is that the total cost, or is that
That's
the
bill-
only payment we've made?
That's the bill, as far as I know,
Okay.
it's the only bill we've paid or going to pay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Call to vote, roll call, please.
801 to 803, Mr. Demakia.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
And Mr. Williams.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Weber. Now report and recommendations of the superintendent, Dr. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I would like the board to consider for approval 10.01 to 10.08 personnel matters.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
And Mr. Williams.
Yes.
I would like the board to consider for approval 11.01 to 11.11 operation matters.
So moved.
Support.
Discussion?
I-
Roll call.
I missed a second. Who was?
Ballard.
Mr. Ballard, okay.
Come on, Dale.
Mr. Demakia.
What was the question?
Yes or no, Tony?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
And Mr. Williams.
Yes.
I'd like the board to consider for approval the adoption of National Nurses Week for the 2015-2016 school year.
Motion to approve?
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia.
Yep.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
And Mr. Williams.
Yes. Any new business?
Mr. Williams,
Yes, sir.
you and I had discussed a resolution regarding reorganizing the grades.
Yes.
Is that going to be
I appreciate that,
added?
Mr. Smith. We do have a walk-on item
Okay, thank
to
you.
consider the resolution for redistricting and establishing school attendance boundaries. And this is in regards to the fact that as we open our new high school next year, students from the annex, the freshmen will go, and credit recovery will go to the high school, and we'll have 3 middle schools, which takes our elementary schools from K-6 to K-5, and we need to rebalance the student populations in each to make sure that there's equity across the district.
And we had to enter into our previous realignment via board action. And so now we're just going back to, as the new high school is built, and so it's kind of.
Well, board
reversing.
policy requires board to approve that.
Yeah. So, this is item, we'll call it
12.02.
12.02.
12.02, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Well, this is the motion to walk it
So-
on first, sir? We gonna do first?
Motion to walk it on, someone?
Yep.
So
There's
moved.
mo- Support.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams?
Yes. Now, motion to
Motion to approve 12.02.
Second.
discussion? Roll call,
I just,
please.
excuse me,
Mm.
I just want to point out, and Aaron, this is going to kind of fall in your, the sooner parents know where their kids are going next year, because 5th graders will all be going to a different school in the 6th grade. Some middle school kids that are currently going to, that are 7th graders this year at Longfellow, maybe will be going back to Southview Middle next year and switching the high school from Southview to the new one. Some kids will now be able to walk to school that have bus passes. Others will need bus passes because they'll now be farther from the school than walking distance. So, Dr. Graham, when do you think
Thank
that
you.
will be
If I
ready?
could jump in, actually, that's not Mrs. Gadd, that's actually me.
Well-
Oh, no, we have a few other things to do.
Yeah, but she does all your work, doesn't she?
She is one of many people who do all my work, but rest assured, I don't do any of it. But we still have a few things questions to answer in terms of, as we take our special ed programs that were hubbed in some buildings and spread them out, ELL as we spread them out, it's a little more complicated than just the redistricting part.
And she
But-
doesn't have her yellow shoes on either.
Just,
I have no response to that.
we done.
But
Move on.
that's all, I guess that's all I have to say. It's coming soon.
Use that thing, man. You got gym duty.
What'd you call it? Come on.
May we call this to a vote, please?
Yes, why don't
12.02,
you?
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams?
Yes. We have no committee reports. or
Yes, we do.
requests.
Sorry. I have a very short report, legislative, but very important, because it does could impact us. To date, 6 bills impacting public education have been passed, enacted by the 131st General Assembly. The OSB, Ohio School Boards Association, is currently monitoring 76 other bills. One of the bills enacted is HB 70, also known as the Youngstown Plan. A recent Ohio appellate court ruling upheld a lower court ruling which prevented the newly appointed Youngstown Academic Distress Commission from meeting until a teacher was appointed to that commission by the board president, who was very reluctant to do that. She appointed someone who was an administrator, a former teacher. The Youngstown Education Association took it to court and won. It was appealed, and the appeal upheld the lower court decision. So finally, the board president has appointed a teacher, and the commission held its first meeting last Wednesday. The commission is now beginning a search for a CEO to replace the current school superintendent, who happens to be an Admiral King High School graduate.
Yeah.
The CEO will be bound by will not be bound by any existing labor agreements, will not have to have a superintendent's license, and will be paid by the state. The anticipated salary range is between $160,000 and $180,000 per year. A lawsuit filed by the Youngstown Education Association challenging the legality of House Bill 70 is set for trial in September. Remember, House Bill 70 could impact Lorain in the future, which is why State Senator Manning and State Representative Ramos are working to write legislation to protect Lorain schools from a House Bill 70 state takeover. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other reports or requests, gentlemen? Second hearing of the public?
God.
They're all lined up. This time, can we have, when is our next board meeting?
It's May 2nd, 2016 at 6:30.
So with that,
And just one quick one. We have 2 board meetings in June. I'm going to recommend that we have a board meeting on June 27th, which is a Monday, to help close out the year, as our normal year end. So in that respect, we can have 2 board meetings, okay, just a little farther apart, if that works out that way for us to do that.
I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow, let alone June 22nd.
Just a heads up, sir. Okay.
all right. May I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Who supports?
Roll call.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia and Mr. Williams?
Yes.
We're adjourned
Okay,
at
that's the first
Thank you,
yes.
everyone.
We are adjourned.
7:37.
That's the
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools, TV 20 WLCS.
To purchase a high-quality copy of the program you just viewed, please call Lorain City Schools Television at 282-8400.